Hello there, Mark Stevens, the CEO and founder of Smart Recruiter Online. I'm with Ryan Manning today. He's one of our senior demonstrators, system experts on Smart Recruit's platform, and is also heading up the team that look after our resellers from a sales perspective. So if you guys are coming on board as a reseller, Ryan's your man. He's going to help you to understand the best methods for presenting this, dealing with objections, getting those demonstrations booked in, delivering them well, and hopefully closing them down and turning it into a paying customer. So today's session, this particular session we're working on today, is all around information gathering. It's a key part of the process because asking the right questions, gathering the right information is really going to help you to stay focused on the demonstration itself so that it's relevant to the client, and it's going to help you to hone in on the sweet spot or the sweet spots that the client has, and make it significantly more likely for them to come on board and trial the system with you. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the fact-finding form that we've put together that we use. We designed this over 18 months ago. It's had very little changes made to it in that time. It's remained very central to our strategy. And we would use this form at the start of the process in the first call. When we're booking the demonstration, the last thing that we do before we let that person get off the phone is, let me quickly run through a few questions with you so that I can prepare properly for the presentation, so that I can make it 100% relevant to you. You know, who wouldn't want to have a demonstration that was tailored to their specific needs and desires and objectives? So important that we ask the right questions, of course. Ryan, how do you do this? Do you do this online, or do you print this off and write on it? How do you do it? Or do you just ask the questions, make some notes in your notebook?
Yeah, so as I'm doing this, I typically ask the questions and make notes and then fill this out after. And depending obviously what parts need expanding, because obviously you can get a lot of information from this. So it's best to make notes, then pull it into this once you've completed the call.
Okay. So you don't make it too much of a formal thing?
No.
You don't want them to feel that you're filling out a form?
Yeah, so there's no, I'm not asking question after question. I'm sort of flowing in conversation. So once you've done this a few times, you get into it. Just sounds like a conversation, but you've in following these questions in the way that they go.
So some of the questions that are in here, you probably have asked as part of the dialogue that you've had building up to this. Typically, like, you know, so what system are you using right now to manage your recruitment activity? Yeah,
exactly that.
Any of the other sort of qualification questions that come out naturally in the first parts of your discussion?
Yeah, so you typically get to find out where their roles are going to, so what boards they're advertising with. In that conversation, you tend to find out if they're contracted or they buy, how they sort of purchase their credits, so they're single credits, bulks. That all tends to come out in conversation. And you tend to find out their pain points as well. So there's a part on here which asks what areas they're looking to improve on. So again, that does typically come out in the conversation that you're having as well. So a lot of this does come out. I think this is more for just for pointers for yourself to make sure you're asking the right questions. But yeah, a lot of it does come out in conversation.
And when you've completed this, I know that you complete a digital version of this and then save it on the CRM against the prospective client, especially when there's a demonstration that's been booked in, so that you can easily find it and access it again.
Yeah, so this is stored against the client within our database.
Okay. And how important does this information become when you're doing the actual demonstration?
Yeah, so this is sort of the Bible to me. So once I know exactly what the client's pain points are, what their system, I can always revert back to this and keep going back. So they can tell me, for instance, they're looking to improve on this. That doesn't leave my mind because I've visually got it then in front of me. So yeah, I can focus on the areas which are more beneficial to them, to ultimately to help me sell the product or sell the service to them a lot easier.
Mm. And that's absolutely key, isn't it? Because the demonstration is the demonstration of how Smart Recruit can help them solve their problems, not just a walkthrough of the system.
Yeah.
We may want it to feel that way, but in reality, what we're staying focused on is how the system is going to solve their problems. So let's just go through a couple of these then. So the first one is asking, you know, what kind of technology or system they have in place. Well, you know, what happens when they say they haven't got any technology in place?
To be fair, that's good. That way, then they sort of come in with it fresh, sort of fresh-minded. So if they don't have any systems in place, they normally have some sort of HR system, I would assume. But obviously that isn't nothing to do with what we do. So yeah, when they say they haven't got any in place, I kind of like that, as they're not comparing us to anything. They sort of coming in, as I mentioned, sort of fresh-minded.
I guess you asked them why they haven't got something in place.
Yes. So we go through the sort of obviously the qualification. So we ask them, what system they are using. If they say they haven't got any, then why haven't they got any systems? And have they looked at systems before? So yeah, there's a lot we can do, or a lot of questions we can ask around that.
I'm guessing it's perceived cost, or they've had a price for an ATS platform which is significantly higher than ours. I mean, most ATS systems won't get out of bed for 15, 20 grand starting points. So that eradicates that solution from a lot of SMEs, I guess.
Yeah, I think cost is one of the biggest ones to SME companies. That sort of benefits me massively, because when they come onto cost for us, it's a no-brainer for them, so to speak. But yeah, cost is a big one to why they don't have systems in place.
Do you quickly skirt through some of the key tools as well? Things like, multi-posting and parsing and video profiling. Do you ask them about whether or not they do use those tools, or whether they'd like to have access to that type of technology for screening purposes?
Yes, if they don't have a system in place, I don't tend to touch on parsing and stuff like that, as they don't know what that is. But I ask them around sort of the video profiling and psychometric testing, assessments and stuff like that. Even though they don't have it, it is something they like to talk about. They all like the sound of the majority of the tools, but they just don't have any technology that can do it.
Okay. And having it all in one place is a massive attraction for most people, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to obviously one of the biggest areas for us from a commercial perspective is selling media. That's where the majority of our margins are, and that will be the same for our resellers. So how do you go about investigating what media channels they're using, and talk us through that type of conversation? Give us an example of what it might sound like.
So typically then when we come onto the media, so I ask them where they're posting their jobs. What I first started with, where they're posting, why they've actually chosen them channels. So you tend to find a lot of them just actually choose a job board which they're familiar with, as opposed to one which will give them the best results. And then I touch on if they purchase their credits in bundles or single credits at a time. So yeah, that's how I sort of start the initial conversations with them. Break it down into sort of in regards to different boards. So speak a little bit around sort of the boards while they're using them. And that's pretty much it, really. So just dig down on, I think one of the main things is why they're choosing the channels they're choosing, and have they got any evidence as to why they're using them channels.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How often do you find that somebody actually does have evidence as to why they're using that or buying from that particular channel?
Tend to find that they don't. Like I said, it's just a board that they're familiar with. So it's a board that they've heard, or a board which that they deem to be sort of a large board. So that's typically why they choose, and there's no actually evidence in the background as to they'll generate more applications from that board compared to another board. They don't tend to have any of that information.
Okay, so that's great. That's very powerful stuff, isn't it? You don't even know why you're buying on that, other than it's historical, or it's a habit that you've bought from that particular one, or it's one you've heard of most, but they don't really know whether the majority of relevant traffic that they're looking for is actually going to it.
Yeah.
Okay, and typically, how many boards do they buy media on, would you say, if they're dealing with the job boards or the advertising channels independently?
They'll buy maybe 2 or 3 different boards. So yeah, I tend to find they're using maybe 2 or 3 at a time.
And what would they particularly? What do you know? Do they tell you how much they're spending on those boards?
So if they're buying single credits, I spoke to one client before, which is in the care sector. They're paying £200 for a single credit on a board. So if they're doing that on 2 or 3 boards, they're looking at £400 to £600 just for a single job with 3 advertising channels.
Okay, and the maximum spend on a media package through SmartRecruit is £600 for just the media.
Yeah,
but that's going to stick anything from 50 to 150 job boards.
Yeah, and when I mention that to them, it's sort of a no-brainer for them.
And we're going to help them write their copy, we're going to help them optimize their copy, and we're going to distribute it through the multi-poster, and we're going to capture it, and we're going to grade it and rank it as well, and we're going to support them through the campaign. It's almost a no-brainer.
I just had to say on that because they don't have a multi-poster in place as well. It's the manual work that they have to do. So again, it's another thing for them.
Is the media aspect of it, is that really a sweet spot for a lot of businesses that we win?
Yeah, I think 9 times out of 10, the cost savings in regards to the media itself Like as you just mentioned there, the package for a single campaign through SmartRecruit, they get 3 boards, while we can give them access to hundreds of boards. So yeah, I think the cost is definitely a big thing for them.
Okay, great stuff. I'm guessing that other ways of gaining their attention as well would be to ask, have you ever had a job that struggled to get enough good quality candidates through? Because most internal recruitment teams will have experienced that at some point. I'm just thinking about the way we ask questions right now. You know, we wouldn't say, do you always get enough good quality applications coming through? We want the answer to be, specific to, the question we're asking. We want it to be no, don't we? So we say to them, have you ever had that experience? What did you do differently? What did happen next? Ultimately, that can quite often lead to them going to a recruitment agency, of course. Yeah,
I tend to ask them what the cost of the business is if they don't fill that role. So that's a good one, which I have, which I use. So a lot of them turn around and say they need the role to be filled. So that leads in then to as you just mentioned there, well, do you use agencies? So that's a good question which I ask.
And what percentage of their jobs are they putting through recruitment agencies right now?
Not a high amount. I think sort of the use of agencies has dropped off quite drastically. So they try to fill them through whatever means that they can, as opposed to going to an agency just to keep costs down.
So you think there's a trend towards direct hire?
Yeah, I think specifically for the smaller companies, where keeping the cost down is sort of key to them. With them, yes, I think as you go further up the chain, some companies tend to use agencies more than what the smaller companies do.
Okay, all right, good stuff. So we can prompt certain scenarios, or we can ask questions that get them thinking about things where their pains might exist, right?
Yeah.
So what sort of tactics do you use to try and plant seeds in their head?
In regards to their pains?
Yeah.
So I'd ask them stuff like, from an application point of view, from an application, I don't know, you kind of put me on the spot there, mine's gone blank.
Yeah, so the obvious one is, do you sometimes struggle to get enough good quality candidates through the door, or enough enough volume through the door, or do you sometimes feel that you don't do enough due diligence with candidates, and this may be affecting attrition levels and things like that? What I'm thinking here is, sometimes we do have to fish for the answers, don't we?
Yeah, and I think you do, because it's not at the forefront of their mind. It's all about the questions you ask, which actually puts it in their mind. And I think that's one of the key things. It's all about the questions.
And you're jotting this down, and you're going to recap, I guess, at the end of all of this, certainly around the 2 or 3 sweet spot items that you think are in the sweet spot.
Yeah, what I typically do is, once I've completed this, if I've got enough time with them at the end of the call, I just quickly do a summary to make sure all the information I have is correct. But then what I also do is, at the start of every demonstration, just recap. So I say to them, okay, so just to confirm, last time you mentioned 3 key areas you're looking to improve on was X, Y, Z. Again, just to put it in their mind, just reconfirm that I've got it right as well. So when I am doing the demonstration, obviously I can focus on them parts, just to show them that part of the solution.
Do you use that as a part of a pre-close as well, just to say, look, if I can satisfy these 3 areas, are we good to move forward on some sort of demonstrate or some sort of trial?
Free trial, yeah. I think that's one of the key things. So obviously the person you've got on the phone, asking that question, you then lead into next steps as well. So I ask them, what are the next steps if they like what they see, and they're happy that we can, as you mentioned, to do that for them and cover their sort of pain points. Would they be happy to set up the free trial?
If they report into somebody else that's going to have to sign this off, I'm guessing you're going to go for a slightly different outcome in your pre-close.
So
if you have
if we can satisfy it all, will you help me then to try and get the other person onto the phone so we can take them through it also?
We've done the demonstration. Yeah, so sometimes I know we demonstrate 2 or 3 times. Certainly, the bigger the client, the more likely that's going to happen.
Yeah, I've been through 2, 3, 4, 5 demos to one organisation. So there's sometimes there's a chain of command which has to go through.
Yeah, thankfully it's not very often that we have to do more than 2 demos, but certainly if we establish that this isn't going to be the decision maker, our objectives would be to work towards a second demo with that other person. And then you can start to align with that person and collaborate with them to influence the decision maker to come and join us for another call. But of course, if they are a decision maker, we want to try and get them to confirm as early as possible that if we're satisfying them in terms of what we can do, against their objectives, that they'll be happy to give this a trial. Now, I know you mentioned free trial. Now, we just should be clear on this, that it's a free trial for the platform, 3 months free trial on the platform. So the client still has to come and buy the media for any campaigns that we're going to run. But of course, these media campaigns are going to be significantly cheaper than if they went and bought them themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully that was a good insight into, and we covered quite a lot there in terms of getting the qualification questions out. And I think just to recap on this is that, try not to treat it like a form. Some of these questions you'll get familiar with, the type of technology they're already using and what their biggest challenges are, etc. So as you revert back to your form, you can quickly jot down the answers that you've already received, but just make sure that you don't miss anything. But also, this information is absolutely key. We need to find out what those 2 or 3 key drivers are that the client is going to be most interested in, so that we stay focused on that through the course of the demonstration and that we close against them. This is a sale at the end of the day. When we presented this, we satisfy them. People do not like making decisions, so we do have to be salespeople still here to get them started. All right. Thank you for joining us on this particular session. We hope that's useful.